Hi there, and welcome to Paws To Reflect, a podcast, or a dogcast if you will, all about, you guessed it, dogs. Hear inspiring stories of everyday people working with extraordinary dogs and how these dogs help their person in authentic and compelling ways. We will hear from the experts in their fields, including veterinarians, animal behavioralists, trainers, groomers, and so many more. We'll also be delving into the exciting world of competitive canine sports, some of which you may never have heard of. I'm your host, Barbara Ann, so grab your bowl of treats and get ready to have a reason to smile today. Because dogs. And welcome to another show. Today our guest is Feld, who is an author, and I will let her give us an introduction. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Ellen.
Hi, thanks so much for having me here. Yes, I am an author. I write primarily horse books and donkey books for children, but I have recently branched out to canines. So my first canine book just recently came out, and I love to talk about my books. I love to talk about dogs and these amazing police dogs, and I work from home writing books and taking care of my horses on a horse farm out in the middle of nowhere.
Which is a perfect place to be. So your latest book is called What Does a Police Dog Do? Tell us, what was your inspiration for this book?
Well, this book goes back several years. I have a series of donkey books written for young children that I work with a photographer, and we've had great success with those books. And I was doing a book signing down in Pennsylvania at the Lancaster Harrisburg Farm Expo. And the Lancaster Mounted Patrol was there. They had a booth, and one of the officers came over and he was looking at my books, and he was fascinated by the donkey books and asked if I could do a similar book about his police horse. And I jumped on that because anything to promote police, I want to do that. My son's a police officer. I understand how difficult it is, and I think it's very important to present to kids a very positive message about police, and they're at that time just our equine partners. And I jumped at the opportunity, and we did the two photo shoots where my photographer, who's in New York, and myself in Massachusetts traveled down to Pennsylvania. We did a photo shoot in downtown Lancaster following the officer around, and one of the canine officers also, who is in the book, with his dog. And then we came back a month later for the Bethlehem Music Fest, which is this enormous music fest that gets over 1 million people over, I think it's 10 days, and we did a photo shoot there. And when the book came out, it was a huge success. They got a lot of press down in Pennsylvania. A couple TV stations picked it up, and it did really well. And I worked with the mounted unit to raise money using the book, and they were very proactive with the book. Got it into some grocery stores and to some feed stores and bookstores and antique shops and just about anywhere you could imagine. And that first year, over the course of like 3 months, we sold out of the books, and they raised enough money to feed all their horses. They had 4 horses at the time for the whole winter. So they made a lot of money off of the book, fundraising through it. And then after the success of that book, I started to think about, well, why not do one on canines? They're pretty amazing, and a lot of people are fascinated by them. And we did one photo shoot with a New York police department right before COVID hit. And we got some shots, and then we had to put everything on hold. And then that kind of fell apart through COVID, where that police department was dealing with some issues with the anti-police movement, and they said, let's just put this on hold for now. So I had mentioned it to my son, who's a police officer, and he knew someone who was a state trooper, and he said, let me put you in touch with him and see if we can get this started up again. And it just took off. I contacted the state trooper. It was Trooper Patrick Clayton. And my son actually knows Patrick because they're both into Audis, so they know each other through cars, but also because my son's an officer and he's a trooper. So I told Patrick what I wanted to do. He thought it was very cool, and he put me in touch with an officer with a tracking dog, and then Patrick had the arson dog Bijou, and he said, we're doing a recertification down in Bridgewater. Why don't you bring your photographer, come down, and you can start by watching the arson dogs. And that's how it went from there to, why don't you come follow the bomb dogs at Gillette Stadium while they're working during a football game. And then we did a comfort dog in Amherst, and then we did Gino from East Hampton, who does building searches, and we set up a building search and then some tracking outside. So it was loads of fun. I learned a lot, and everyone I worked with was so fun and helpful and just eager to share what their dogs do.
They love to show them off. I do know that.
Well, they have a lot to show because those dogs are amazing.
They are. So while you were visiting these various facilities and really watching these agencies work with their dogs, what stood out the most to you?
I remember when I went to the Bridgewater shooting, which was our first photo shoot. It's a big facility, but they were all waiting around outside, and all the arson dogs are labs, at least all the ones that I saw. Mostly black labs, a few yellow labs, and the troopers were all hanging out, talking to each other, and all the dogs were just running loose. They were off leash, they were just kind of checking things out, but the instant their handler said, come here, they would, even if they were playing with another dog, they would just instantly go over to their handler and, yes, what do you want? And just sit there and wait for the next command. And I was thinking, boy, if my dog were here, he'd probably be down the street by now and gone somewhere. And these dogs are just so amazing. And then the other thing that really struck me was the relationship between the dogs and handlers. Those dogs just adore their handlers, and they want to please those handlers. Any misconceptions someone might have about the handlers being rough with their dogs or mean to their dogs or overworking their dogs, no, those dogs, they live to get that little piece of kibble and make their handler happy.
Yeah, what a lot of people don't understand about the majority of these dogs, with the exception of some of the canines that the police officers use, these dogs go with them everywhere. They go with them everywhere. And, sometimes they have to stay in the car, but most of the time they're with them. And they create that intense bond that most of us are envious of.
Right,
I think,
definitely.
When you worked with the various people, what, if anything, resonated with you besides the bond of the dog? Was there anything that you just went, I get it?
There were so many things. It's hard to pinpoint one. I mean, I was fascinated by the, one piece of kibble will get a dog to work a fire, that one piece of kibble reward. One of the things that I learned was that when they're out, like, say, looking for a criminal who threw a gun out, people think they're smelling for the metal, the gun itself, but they're not. They're looking for the human scent. They're trying to track that human scent that is on the gun. I didn't know that, and I suspect most people don't realize that. Just the way that they will do this. I thought all the dogs were the same with the rewards, but they're not, because the Gino, the tracking dog, his reward is his chew toy. And he's a Malinois. He's not as food motivated as a lab would be, so they train differently in that respect. I thought the rewards were all the same. So that there's very slight differences. The other thing that you mentioned that I also learned is, yes, the dogs live with the handlers all the time. And I was talking to one, and he's like, well, I'm going on vacation, so of course dog's coming with me. He's not going to a kennel. He has to go with me. He's with me 24/7. Then I saw one of the dogs. The officer had just had a daughter born like 6 months earlier, and the little girl was playing with the dog. And I've seen that dog work and the intensity of that dog working. And then he's so gentle with the little girl, and that's her doggy, and it's very sweet. So it's amazing what these dogs do for us.
And they can switch when they need to.
Yes.
I've seen it in action, and you're right. It's awe-inspiring just to see that. Dogs are dogs, and they're just the very coolest. What kind of research do you do prior to writing a book? You get an idea. I assume the process, now I'm not a book writer, but I assume the process is you come up with hey, this would be a great thing to write about. And so I assume you do some research. How long do you spend researching before you begin the book? Or is it kind of an integrated process?
Yeah, it's a little bit different. I write primarily fiction. I have a horse series for the tween girls, think Black Beauty type books, and the donkey books, and those just come out of my head. And when I'm stuck, I go muck stalls, and the next idea will come to me, and that's how I do it. For the nonfiction books, both police books, I did some minor research ahead of time, but I really honestly didn't do a lot of research because I wanted the handlers and the dogs to show me the way. I didn't want to go in with any preconceived notions of, well, this is how they train, this is how they do this or that. I came in with a stenographer's notebook because I used to take shorthand. I was originally trained to do shorthand, so I can still write notes really fast. And I had my little notepad, and it was basically, show me, tell me. I want you to tell the story, not me. I'm here to put what you're showing me into words that little kids can understand. We did go back and forth, my photographer and I, about what to include in the book. It was easier with the police horses and the police dogs because the books are aimed to young kids, say age 5 up to 7 or 8. And I didn't want to get into some of the more nitty gritty of what some of the dogs have to do. How much do you mention? I mean, I've seen some canine books for kids and they do things that I don't really want to discuss that with little kids. I want this to be very positive and upbeat. So that was an issue. We went back and forth, and can we really do this with canines and cover enough information without scaring little kids, or discussing narcotics, or even discussing arson and fire. Some kids, that might frighten them, so we need to keep it very positive and upbeat. And I was like, well, let's just see what the troopers tell me, and let's go cover a fire. And when we did the fire shots, we did the recertification first for the arson dogs, and then Patrick Clayton set up a photo shoot with us with the Holyoke Fire Department, where they set the building on fire. They had some of their cadets there practicing, and there's one full page photo of the practice building. I don't remember what they called it, but with the flames coming out of it, because I know little kids, ooh, fire, that would be interesting. It was important to show the fire and then show this dog. And again, we didn't go into the dangers involved in that, because this age group that would be too much. But we went into how amazing it was that these dogs can just go into a fire scene and pick out an accelerant. And like there's a photo in the book. It actually was one of the hardest photos for us to get, where it's actually my photographer's hand with a blue glove on it, with an eyedropper in his hand, and he's dropping one drop of liquid and it's into a little cup. And it's just to give the kids an idea of how small a sample the dogs have to be able to smell of accelerant. That was a very hard shot to get, but we did get it, or he did get it. And I can't say enough about my photographer, John Sabula. Very lucky to have him. He had a blast doing this too. So again, for the research, I let the officers and the troopers show me what they wanted me to know. And I discussed with each of them, you tell me what's important for you to get through to the public. What do you want them to know? When I did the comfort dog with the Amherst Police Department, I knew what a comfort dog was, but barely. I hadn't heard about them too much. And, I said, show me what the dog does. And then also at the end, once I had a rough draft, I did a mock-up and sent the mock-up to everyone that was involved with the book, because it was very important that it be accurate. I might have, 2 months after doing the photo shoot, I might have misconstrued something. So I wanted to make sure everything was exactly as they wanted it, because I'm presenting to the general public these officers and troopers. And again, their pictures are in the books. They want to be presented in a positive light, which is very important to me. And I didn't even want to get a dog's name wrong, or misspell a dog's name. That would be the ultimate, but that terrible thing to do.
Full disclosure, when I did an interview with Pat, I called her Bayou instead of Bijou. So yeah, luckily I edit my own podcast. That's all I can say about that. So what, if any, challenges did you face when writing this particular book, the canine book? Did you find that it came just as easily to you as it did with the horses, or did you find any kind of a challenge other than what you did describe regarding how far do we go as it's a children's book and there are things that they just don't need to see or hear?
Right. I think both were a challenge, but in a different way. With the police horse book, I was kind of a little concerned with, do I have enough information here to make an interesting book? We were originally going to set up a photo shoot at their training arena, and that fell through at the last minute. So our training shots were basically Eric, the officer, going into the barn and saying, let me see what we have here that we can put out for Liam. Liam was his horse that's in the book. And to make it interesting, we had some pool noodles, so we did a shot of him going over the pool noodles. And we were supposed to be in an indoor arena with the big bouncing ball and all the things that you do to train horses, and that again fell through. And then he had one smoke bomb left. He's like, "This is it. This is the one we have. Don't blow it." And my son, who had come down with us when we were ready, he threw it, and I told the photographer ahead of time, take 100 shots or more. I don't care. We got like 2 shots out of the 100 he took that really show the smokes, thank God. So we got a great shot. So with the horse book, it was, do I have enough information? With the dog book, it was, I have a lot of information, but what do I use to make it, again, appropriate for a young child to read? That they can read at bedtime with their parents or grandparents and not get scared that night. Oh, I'm going to have a bad dream because the doggy bit someone or something. So, we don't go into that. So that was more of a challenge. The other challenge is for each book, I probably had 1,500 to 2,000 shots to use. And for one picture, it might take me several hours or a day to pick one. And then I'd get it down to 3 or 4 shots, and I would zoom each shot on my desktop. And I would, like for the horse, be looking at the angle of one of the hoofs. It's a little better in this one, back and forth, back and forth. And that's really hard.
Yeah, and then it also kind of gets in the way of the creation, I would think, because you're looking for specific.
It can be a challenge. It's I know with the police dog book, we did, one of the pictures is of all the troopers that were at the recertification with their dogs. And I don't remember how many photos John took, but no photo was absolutely perfect. Someone had their eyes closed. The dog was looking down. There's 20 troopers and dogs. And so I actually had to remove someone's head and put it onto another photo to get him to look the right way.
That's awesome.
You can't tell in the picture, but it's like, gosh darn it, he wasn't looking in the one really good picture. So, and there are other things that I do, like I'm not a Photoshop expert, but I've become pretty good at it, where once all the final images are selected, my photographer sends them to me as JPEGs, just so he can get them all on a thumb drive, and then I'll send him the numbers of the images I want, and then he will send them to me as TIFFs, because that's what we need for the book and the designer. And then once I have those TIFFs, and they're very high resolution, so they're very hard to send back and forth, I will go into them in Photoshop, and if there's a leaf or some glop on the pavement in front of a dog, I will go in and pixel by pixel remove it and clone it into the pavement. So that takes several weeks to a month or two. And I think a lot of people, that would drive them crazy, but for me, going in pixel by pixel, it's very odd. I find it weirdly relaxing.
You get into a zone. Thank God you're self-employed.
Yes, exactly. So I do that, and there's, I don't want to make any major changes, but I think one of them had a porta potty in the background. It's like, oh, I don't want a porta potty in the background. So,
you should carefully put together a book on bloopers, things that
yes
can happen.
So the porta potty's turned into a tree or something, or I'll clone one of the bushes next to it and move it over, and that actually takes a lot of time, and just those little things that most people wouldn't notice. But if you don't get them out of the photo, it draws your eye to them.
Right. I do the same when I'm doing the podcast and I'm editing. It takes hours because,
Yes.
I've got 2 strands or however many guests I have, and I have to individually, it's a lot of work, and but it's so worth it. You get lost in it, and next thing you know, it's 2:00 in the morning and you're like,
Whoopsie.
What lines of work did you witness when you were with the dogs and their handlers? So you said you saw the bomb detection dogs. You did the emotional support dog. You also said police dogs and the arson dogs.
Right.
I've worked with dogs for well over 30 years, and I've loved dogs my entire life. And so anytime I see a dog, which is the most ridiculous thing about me, I think, but it is who I am, and I've learned to accept it, is I will act as if I've never seen a dog before. And I get all googly and my fingers start to twitch, and I just would really like to pet that dog. And of course I ask permission, but still it's just something in me. Did you find that you were more drawn to one type or one activity versus the other? Did you find that?
I had a really hard time not going up to the arson dogs and hugging them all.
I think I have hugged a couple of them.
They were just so cute, and they're wagging their tails and they look so happy. And I'm like Ellen, these are working dogs. Don't bother them. Stop. Don't bother them. But then, like, after they were recertified, I did get some serious hugs and kisses, but that was very hard. And the hardest part for me was staying out of their way and not trying to hug them and pet them and talk to them, even talking to them. I didn't want to bother them. At the arson recertification, once the dogs were all done and recertified, I was offered the chance to take one of them around the course, which I jumped at. So that was very cool. And there were a bunch of troopers kind of watching me and teasing me and, come on, hurry up, go, go, go. And the dog just knew exactly. And how they would check each canister and put their nose in it and just automatically sit. And I'm like, no, come on, nope. And they knew. And actually, they make it look a lot easier than it is, because trying to get the kibble out of your little pocket pouch on the side of your hip and give it to the dog quick enough.
Timing is everything. Yes.
It's not easy. And I think at one point it actually fell off and the kibble went flying. So, it's not as easy as they make it look, but it was fun. But I think letting the dogs work and stay out of their way was the hardest part for me.
And the wow. Was there a wow moment where, like you said, you've known that some did these, but you didn't know that it could do this? Was there a moment where you just went, wow, like that is one of the coolest things I've ever seen?
I think part of it for me was, like, I'd seen them on TV. I used to watch Live PD all the time, and there was another show, I forgot the name of it, I'm sure you'll probably remember, where they had a competition for the canines, and it was mostly dogs that had become well known through Live PD. It was on for summer, and it was like 8 or 9 episodes, and whatever dog won that week would come back for the semifinals and then finals, and they had to do a bunch of different things.
I know what you're talking about, but to me,
I don't remember the name of it. So, I used to watch that and seeing that, it's really cool. But when you're actually there with them and seeing them in person, it's much different, and it's much cooler.
It's more visceral. I think people feel it more. You can see, you have a screen when you're watching it, and the energy that both the animal and the people and the handler, all that energy affects you in a visceral way. So it was very, very different to witness something in person as it is like watching a football game,
Yeah, and I think part of it was when I was with the dogs, I saw them playing beforehand and then just come to life. Well, not come to life per se, because they were very playful and everything, but just turn on work mode instantly. Mm-hmm. And like when you're watching it on TV, you don't see that because you see them come out in work mode already. You don't see the behind the scenes where they're happy-go-lucky puppies and just, playing with each other. Yeah. And then they're called to work. But it was very cool to just see that and see them just come alive for their work and to find whatever they were being asked to find. With the Comfort Dog, we went to UMass. We met at the Amherst Police Station. It was Officer William Laramie at the Amherst Police Department. We went to UMass, and it was fall semester during finals. So he brought his dog Winston, and
Winston. Yeah.
I know Winston. He was passed away,
I
but
know. We were all bummed.
yeah, I mean, and as a side note, it was a very hard decision. The book was in final production when Winston passed, and it was do we want to go through with this? And I talked to Officer Laramie and said, it's a great tribute to him. He's going to teach thousands of kids about a comfort dog, and his legacy will go on through this book. So we decided to keep him in there. At that time, we didn't have time to do another photo shoot, so it would have been removing the comfort dog altogether, which I didn't want to do. But anyway, with Winston, we went to UMass, and Officer Laramie brought us to, I don't know what the building was, but there were a whole lot of students studying for finals and being very stressed. And he brought the dog in, and as soon as the dog came in, it's like, oh, you heard 20 people at the same time saying, oh, puppy, look at the dog. And they just smothered Winston, and Winston was in all his glory. And they just, for like 20 minutes, they took a break from studying to play with the dog. And Winston worked that room like a professional, going from person to person. What can I do for you? Can I give you a big sloppy kiss? Can I give you a hug? What do you want? What do you need? It was adorable. And the students just came to life and forgot studying for a little while they played with the dog.
So job accomplished.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and just by being a dog, that's the amazing to me. You notice a huge difference no matter where you go. And granted, there are people that do not like dogs, and those kind of people I don't need in my life. You know how they say that? But the dog is just a dog, and it can be trained and bred to do amazing things, but the reality is that all it has to do is be.
Right.
And people respond to that in mostly a positive way. And I find so much awe in that because they're just dogs.
Yeah.
But they're amazing just being dogs. I think I say this on every podcast. People are going to stop listening to me.
Never.
So Willow Bend Publishing, is that your publishing?
Yes.
Or is that, so you publish your own books?
Correct.
That's correct. I think that's very, very cool. How did you even start with that?
Actually, I used to write for horse magazines.
That's right. You told me about that.
Yeah, I actually, my training was in Russian studies in college and in graduate school, pretty close to fluent in Russian. And I went to graduate school in Washington, and I got a job working in the Foreign Policy Office of Senator Kennedy, very far removed from the hill towns of Western Massachusetts. I loved the job, but I was not a city girl, and I really missed my horses, and I couldn't afford to keep them in the Washington area. The prices were insane there. I used to do a lot of writing for the senator, foreign policy briefs, and we would, as a team, work on things that he would read on the Senate floor and stuff. So I did a lot of writing, and I've always liked to write. And they did offer me a permanent position, but I was like, I've got to go back to the country. I can't live in the city. So
the country feeds your soul.
Yes, and my horses. So I came back to Western Mass, found a job locally that was not challenging enough. So I would write on the side, and I started writing for horse magazines. At first, I wrote for a little kind of newsletter magazine that desperately needed information, articles, whatever, so they didn't pay, but it was fun, and I did that for a little while, and then I submitted to a paid magazine, and they purchased the first article, and then that took off, and I think at my height I was writing for probably 10 or 15 magazines. Most of them were national, and that kept me pretty busy. And then I was between assignments at one point, and I wrote the first chapter of my first book because I just like to write. And a couple friends read it and said, okay, so what happens next? I'm like, I don't know. And they said, well, write the rest of the book. So I was like, okay, why not? So I wrote the book. It took off. It won a big national award, Children's Choices, from the International Reading Association. Breyer Animal Creations picked it up and made a model of the horse, which was my real horse, and sold it with a copy of the book, which for non-horse people, Breyer horses, it's kind of like the Academy Award for horse people. To have a model of one of your horses is big deal. So the books took off, and at the same time, the magazines were slowly dying. The internet had taken over. No one was buying magazines. And I think at this point, only 2 of those magazines are still in existence. So it's a good thing that the books took off because the magazines went away. So I keep writing. I've got 3 new books coming out next year. So I've always got new books in the works. And the police dog book is my first foray into non-equine topics, and it was a blast to write, and I'm really happy to be able to feature dogs. And
yeah, I'm very happy. The book, I actually bought the book right after I was introduced to you. I purchased the book and just to see what it was all about, and of course because it was dogs, and I was so excited because I saw the people that I know.
Right.
You know, I'm like, oh my god, I know him. I know him.
They're famous now, and the book is
they're famous now. Yeah,
yeah,
and,
it's sold nationally, so they're nationally famous. So
did you give them each a copy of the book?
they got a bunch of copies. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm going to have to touch base with a few of them and go, I see you in a book now.
Yep.
So we're going to be wrapping it up. And I know that you and I had discussed that on your website, which is
willowbendpublishing.com.
So I will put a link on below in our show notes so that people can visit that site and look at all the phenomenal books that you have written. So you did mention that there's a special discount offer for our guests that are listening to our podcast, which is, go ahead, if you wanted to just mention that.
Sure. I'm going to create a coupon as soon as we hang up. So anyone who wants to get a 20% discount on the police dog book and any other books, if they want to combine an order of several different books. I have books for reading levels from 3 years old up through 13. The coupon code is Paws To Reflect. All is one word. When you check out, there will be a place to put in the coupon code, and that will automatically deduct 20% from your order.
And again, I will post that link so that people will know what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for your time today and having the patience with a little bit of the technical difficulties we had earlier. And so again, for our listeners, a limited time, go to www.willowbendpublishing.com and receive a 20% off your order of the newest book, which is What Does a Police Dog Do? Or any of the other books that are listed on the website. And you will receive, again, the 20% off with mention of this podcast. Ellen, a final question that I ask every single guest is, if you had a word of advice or a thing that you would like people to know, what would it be?
It's very important to me to present the positive side of policing and how amazing both these dogs and horses and troopers who handle them and how devoted they are. These are amazing people and animals. And I want to highlight that and give them the credit that they deserve and let people know about that.
Yep. And there are different ways to support law enforcement on any agency. And if, there's the nonprofit Mass Vesta Dog, which I am a huge fan of, right, which is the nonprofit that provides vests to protect the dogs. There are many ways to support those in service, mm-hmm, and I am a huge, huge fan of police dogs and police in general, and I think that we're in some sad times with that, but we won't go there.
And we actually hope to be working with Mass Vesta Dog. I've already spoken with them, so you may be able to get these books through them in the near future so that you can support them at the same time.
Right. I bought a calendar and a shirt from them, so...
And they're soon going to have dog books.
Yes. That's wonderful. Good for you.
And also for any other canine unit or law enforcement unit, if they're interested in doing some fundraising, I work with a bunch of different law enforcement agencies to help them raise funds with these books. And I bend over backwards to make it as workable as possible so that you can raise some funds with these and get some money to get your dog's vests, or if you have a mounted unit, supplies for your horses, whatever, drop me an email from Willow Bend Publishing, go into the site, there's a contact form, and I'm happy to discuss and make it work with you so we can raise some money for these guys.
That's wonderful, Ellen. Again, Ellen Feld of many books, not the least of which is What Does a Police Dog Do? Ellen, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I had a blast. Thanks.